War economy and total war in Nazi Germany. Another fun lesson with me, Adam. Welcome back. Uh, yeah, Hitler had a very aggressive foreign policy. Bear in mind that he'd just taken land back that was taken away from him in the Treaty of Versailles. So other countries didn't really like him much, and that probably affected the economy a bit. The growth of the Nazi economy. So, at the beginning of the war, Germany were actually doing quite good from their perspective. They were getting a lot of military successes due to the Blitzkrieg campaign. Blitzkrieg was basically like using motorized vehicles. It was like a form of warfare, proved quite effective, especially initially. Um, but yeah, getting on to the like economy side of things, there was uh, high military expenditure. It actually doubled within more than doubled within the period of 1939 to 41, so the beginning of the war. So lots of expenditure in the military. Rationing. There's food rationing that was introduced at the start of the war. Clothes rationing was introduced in 1939. Soap was rationed, and toilet paper was not available, which, if you ask me, is disgusting. The labour force was mobilised for war. Civilian consumption declined, which is actually sad because I couldn't live without food, and armaments production was low. The number of planes increased from this to that. I'm not going to read them out because you're not going to remember. Um, and the number of tanks for the invasion of Russia in June 1941 was only 800 more than that for the invasion of the West. So there were increases, but the increase was like a small increase. Production was hit by inefficiency and poor coordination. So, it wasn't actually that effective. There's a lack of central control. Um, the ministries of armaments, economics, labour, and finance all had different interests and different demands. So there wasn't really much like coordination. Um, by 1941, there was economic mobilisation for total war, but it failed to achieve the required levels of armaments production. So, nichts goods, as the Germans would say. Total war. By the end of 1941, Germany was at war with Britain, the USSR, and the USA, but arms production was lower than in Britain. So, in response to this, Hitler issued the Rationalisation Decree. In 1942, Speer produced the policy of industrial self-responsibility, which basically ensured mass production. There was a number of important policies. Basically, prisoners in concentration camps were used as workers, and women were employed in arms factories, and skilled workers were no longer conscripted into the army so that they could, work on the production line, as they say. No one says that. And sport was ended in 1943, professional sports. Magazines that weren't essential were closed, and non-essential businesses were also shut. So basically, anything that wasn't essential, wasn't contributing to the total war or total war efforts, that was all shut down, just so they can focus all their effort on the war and hopefully win it for them. Was Spear's policy a success, though, I hear you ask? Well, I'm glad you asked that question because I'm here to answer it for you. It had some great successes, and some not great successes. A couple of the great successes was the increase in production. So tank production rose by 25%, decent. Ammunition production rose by 97%, which is ridiculous, and total arms production increased by 59%. So it was successful in that sense. However, it did have some not so great implications. Gauleiters, which are basically leaders of the local areas, had influence at local levels, and they a lot of the time they didn't actually follow Speer's orders. So, not going to be as successful as if they did follow those orders. The SS did as they wanted, and they didn't, and they exploited their land, but for their own personal gain, not so much for the total war effort. And conquered territories were not exploited economically. And obviously the Allied bombings, the Allies, the legends themselves, bombed Germany, and that definitely affected their total war effort, especially if they were bombing things like factories. So overall, the Nazi economy was unable to meet the demands of the total war effort. So I think not great success, to be honest. Although ammo increased by 70%, which is quite convincing, overall, they weren't able to meet the demand for total war. Not great success, is it? So that's the war economy and total war for Nazi Germany. Lovely stuff.